Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The cemetery was enveloped in an almost unearthly silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind that made the leafless trees shiver. The tombstones, gray and covered in moss, seemed to guard the secrets of past lives. Michael Harrington, a respected millionaire and a man accustomed to controlling every aspect of his existence, walked slowly through the paths, his hands clenched in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the stone engraved with his wife's name, Elizabeth Harrington. His chest tightened with every step. 2 years had passed since her disappearance, and yet he still felt her presence in every corner of the house, in every scent, in every breath of wind that caressed his face. The grief, though stifled by responsibilities and wealth, had never disappeared. Michael knelt before the grave, placing a bouquet of white roses, his trembling fingers brushing the cold stone. As he whispered a few words to Elizabeth, movement caught his attention. A young woman sat nearby, kneeling before another grave, her face buried in her hands. Her sobs were silent but heartbreaking. She wore a dark coat and a scarf that partially hid her hair, but her aura, fragile and moving, pierced the icy air. Michael approached, intrigued by this unexpected presence, and sensed a strange familiarity in the way she wept. "Excuse me, is everything okay?" he asked, his voice soft but thick with emotion. The young woman slowly looked up. Michael felt his breath catch. Her green eyes shone with an intensity he knew all too well, an intensity he had only seen in Elizabeth. His heart was beating frantically, unable to comprehend. She hesitated for a moment, as if weighing the moment, then spoke in a trembling voice. I think you should know the truth." Michael stiffened. Every word seemed to hang in the icy air. The young woman slid a locket from its chain and placed it in Michael's hand. A photo inside showed a sleeping little girl, her face so familiar, so like Elizabeth that his heart skipped a beat. "She's my daughter," she barely whispered. Michael stepped back, his eyes wide, unable to believe what he had just heard. Everything he thought he knew about his life, about Elizabeth, about himself, had just collapsed. The secrets Elizabeth had taken with her, the decisions he had never understood, it all suddenly came together in this shattering truth. A mixture of shock, fear, and hope ran through him. His world had just turned upside down. Standing at his wife's grave, facing this stranger who was no longer a stranger, Michael understood that his life would never be the same again. Michael returned home, his head still heavy from the revelations at the cemetery. The Harrington mansion, vast and luxurious, seemed strangely empty despite the sumptuous furniture and precious paintings hanging on the walls. Every room reminded him of Elizabeth, her laugh, her voice, the warmth of her presence. And now, the idea that he had an unknown daughter, somewhere in the world, transformed the house into a prison of memories and regrets. The next morning, unable to remain inactive, Michael began his investigation. He began with Elizabeth's personal papers, letters, diaries, notebooks she had left behind. Many spoke of their love, their plans, but some passages, cryptic and brief, evoked an unexpected responsibility, a secret she had never dared to reveal to him. Each word resonated in Michael's head like a painful echo. He contacted the young woman he had met, whose name he had obtained, Sophie Bennett. She agreed to meet at a small cafe, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. When Michael saw her enter, his heart leaped. She had grown up, but her green eyes and shy smile were Elizabeth's. The evidence was striking, almost unreal. "Hello," said Sophie, her voice trembling, hesitant. "Hello," replied Michael, unable to hide his emotion. They sat facing each other. For several minutes, neither spoke. Michael was trying to understand how Elizabeth could have kept such a secret. Sophie, for her part, seemed to be struggling to find the right words. "Mom. I mean, Elizabeth asked me never to disturb you." Sophie began. "But why?" Michael asked, his voice cracking with incomprehension. Sophie looked down, playing with the sleeve of her coat. "She wanted to protect you. She thought you wouldn't be ready, that your life would be too complicated to accept a girl you'd never known. Michael felt a wave of anger, sadness, and tenderness wash over him. How could Elizabeth have decided their daughter's fate alone, without him? Yet seeing her there, alive, real, was an unexpected miracle. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know the truth," Sophie replied. For the first time in years, Michael felt a spark of hope in his chest. The road would be long, fraught with questions and revelations, but he had just found a part of Elizabeth he thought lost forever. And this discovery would change his life, forever. Michael hadn't slept a wink all night. Sophie's face haunted his thoughts, and with it, the mysteries left by Elizabeth. He knew he had to understand not only who his daughter was, but also what had driven his wife to hide her birth. The next morning, he invited Sophie to visit the Harrington house. The young woman entered timidly, her eyes wide with the grandeur of the place. Everything seemed too vast, too perfect, too far removed from her modest life. Michael led her to Elizabeth's study, where piles of papers, newspapers, and letters waited to be explored. "Here, everything Mom left behind," Michael said, handing her a yellowed notebook. Sophie picked up the notebook gingerly, as if touching its pages connected her to a mother she'd never truly known. She began reading quietly, discovering intimate passages about love, regret, and her birth. "She wrote that my birth was unexpected, but that despite everything, she loved me," Sophie murmured. "She didn't want me to know," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "She thought you wouldn't be ready, or that it would complicate your life," Sophie explained. Michael felt a dull anger mixed with pain. 2 years of mourning, 2 years of loneliness, and all the while, his own daughter had lived in the shadows, far from him. Yet, looking at Sophie, he saw the brilliance of the life Elizabeth had left him. "I want to understand," said Michael. "How could she keep such a secret? Who took care of you?" Sophie closed her eyes, gathering her courage. "Mom entrusted me to a close friend, a woman who lived far from the city. She raised me like her own daughter. I knew she loved me, but I never dared come looking for you, until now." Michael looked at her, his throat tight. Each word sounded like a cruel reminder of what he'd missed, but also like a light at the end of a tunnel of loneliness. "So, you mean, all this time, I wasn't there, for you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "No," Sophie replied softly. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted you to know the truth when the time came." Michael felt a wave of tenderness and guilt wash over him. He walked over and placed a hand on Sophie's shoulder, a simple gesture but one laden with silent promises. "We have a lot of catching up to do," he said. "I want to know every part of your life I missed." Sophie smiled weakly, but hope already shone in her eyes. A new life, full of revelations and reunions, had just begun for them both. In the days that followed, Michael did everything he could to get closer to Sophie. He felt that every moment he lost with her was unrecoverable, and yet he wanted to make up for lost time, to rebuild a bond shattered by years of silence and secrets. They spent hours talking in the living room, Sophie recounting her childhood, her dreams, her sorrows, and her hopes. Michael listened, sometimes silently, sometimes asking questions, trying to understand the young woman who bore the face and soul of his late wife. Each story, each anecdote brought to the surface memories of Elizabeth he thought forgotten. "You look so much like your mother," Michael said one evening, his gaze lost in Sophie's green eyes. "I miss her," Sophie murmured. "Sometimes I feel like she's right next to me, but not really." Michael felt a pang in his heart. He knew Sophie was living with a huge emptiness, missing both her mother and her father. He wanted to be there for her, but the fear of doing wrong sometimes paralyzed him. One afternoon, while they were exploring Elizabeth's study together, Sophie came across an intricately decorated wooden box. She showed it to Michael. "What is it?" she asked. Michael took the box and opened it gently. Inside were several letters, old photographs, and a small journal. The letters were signed by Elizabeth and addressed to Michael, but never sent. Some spoke of her guilt, others of her fear of losing the man she loved if he learned of Sophie's existence. "She loved you, she really loved you," Sophie said, holding the letters carefully. "I know," Michael murmured, his throat tight. "But I had no idea. She carried everything alone." As they flipped through the pages, a photo fell out. Michael picked it up and stared at it for a long time. It was an image of Elizabeth holding a little girl, and behind them, a woman they now knew, the guardian who had raised Sophie. Michael felt a mixture of anger and gratitude. Elizabeth had made a difficult choice, but she had also protected her daughter from harm and, perhaps, from her own grief. "We have to find this woman," Michael said. "She was very important to you." "Yes," Sophie replied, emotion in her voice. "I want to thank her, to understand her." That moment sealed something between them. Michael understood that revelations of the past were one thing, but now he had to focus on the present and the future. Sophie was no longer a mystery, she was his daughter, and it was time to get to know her for real. As they left the office hand in hand, Michael felt a new warmth in his heart. Their family's story, shattered by silence and secrets, was finally beginning to be rebuilt. And he knew that the days ahead would be filled with new discoveries, and even more surprising truths. In the weeks that followed, Michael and Sophie immersed themselves in Elizabeth's past. Every document, every photo, and every letter seemed to reveal a new facet of the woman he had loved so much but ultimately knew so little about. One morning, while sorting through papers in the study, Sophie came across a worn leather notebook, older than all the others. She opened it and began to read. The pages contained diaries Elizabeth had written as a young adult. Michael sat beside her, silent, ready to listen. "Michael," Sophie whispered, her voice trembling. "She's talking about a man she met before you," she said, pointing to a line in the newspaper. "His name was Jonathan Bennett." Michael felt a shiver run down his spine. The name Bennett, he suddenly remembered the woman who had raised Sophie. A connection was forming in his mind. "She's the woman who raised you," Michael said. "Elizabeth entrusted your life to her to protect you." "But, why?" Sophie read on. Elizabeth described her fear of Michael, her fear that he wasn't ready to accept a girl from a relationship he didn't know. She also explained her doubts, her difficult choices, and her determination to protect Sophie at all costs. "She did everything for love," said Sophie, tears in her eyes. "Even if I never understood, now I know." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "Elizabeth was exceptional, and so are you. We'll make up for lost time." That day, Michael made a decision. He had to find Jonathan Bennett and understand his role in Elizabeth and Sophie's lives. Perhaps this meeting would shed more light on this mysterious and painful past. A few days later, using the information in the notebook, Michael located Jonathan Bennett in a small town several hours away. He decided to go there with Sophie. The journey was silent, but fraught with tension and emotion. Everyone pondered what they would discover. When they arrived, a modest and warm house welcomed them. Jonathan, now elderly but still upright and dignified, watched them enter. His eyes widened when he saw Sophie. "Sophie," he said in a trembling voice. "Is that you?" Sophie nodded, unable to speak. Michael watched, feeling each piece of the puzzle begin to fall into place. Elizabeth's long-buried secrets were finally about to be revealed. And what they discovered would further shake their family. Sitting in Jonathan Bennett's cozy living room, Michael and Sophie listened with rapt attention. Jonathan, a man with graying hair and serious eyes, took a deep breath before beginning. "It's time you knew everything," he said, his voice trembling but firm. Sophie squeezed Michael's hand, seeking comfort. Jonathan then told the story Elizabeth had hidden for so long. Years before meeting Michael, she had been in a relationship with him, but their romance was interrupted by unforeseen circumstances. When she discovered she was pregnant, she made the most difficult decision of her life, to entrust her daughter to Jonathan, her trusted friend, for her protection. Elizabeth was afraid that Michael wouldn't be ready, or that his wealth and status would complicate your life, Sophie, Jonathan explained. She wanted you to have a normal childhood, away from prying eyes, away from problems. Sophie looked down, touched by the gravity of her mother's sacrifice. Michael felt a mixture of guilt and gratitude wash over him. He had never imagined his late wife would have made such a courageous and painful decision. Why now? Michael asked. Why is everything being revealed to us only today? Jonathan sighed. Elizabeth left me instructions. When the time was right, she wanted Sophie to know her father. And I think that time has finally come. Sophie looked up, tears shining in her green eyes. Mom, you just wanted to protect me, she whispered. Michael gently took her in his arms. She did what she thought was best for you, but now we're going to build our life together. Jonathan smiled, relieved to see that the bond between Sophie and Michael was finally beginning to form. There's one other thing, Jonathan continued. Elizabeth also left financial documents and personal letters so you could regain your rights and inheritance, Sophie. She wanted you to know that despite the secrets, you were still part of this family. Michael and Sophie exchanged a stunned look. The sacrifices and secrets of the mother they loved so much now made sense. All this time, Elizabeth had protected her daughter and her husband, even after his death. We have a chance to make up for lost time, Michael said determinedly. Together, we will rebuild what life has taken from us. Sophie nodded, her heart filled with emotion and hope. For the first time in years, she felt that her family was no longer an illusion, but a reality to be rebuilt. And in that small living room, surrounded by memories and revelations, Michael, Sophie and Jonathan realized that the past could finally become a bridge to a future they would never have dared to imagine. After Jonathan's revelation, Michael and Sophie returned to the Harrington house. The atmosphere was different, there was lightness in the air, but also the weight of memories and secrets revealed. They both knew that the road to rebuilding their relationship would be long, but the first step had been taken. In the following days, Michael and Sophie began to share small routines together. They ate breakfast in the large dining room, took long walks in the garden where Elizabeth loved to relax, and spent hours talking about life, dreams, and memories. Each moment brought father and daughter closer together, transforming worry into trust and doubt into affection. Yet Elizabeth's past had not yet revealed all its secrets. While sorting through documents, Sophie came across a file carefully hidden behind old books. Curious, she opened it and discovered anonymous letters and papers referring to mysterious affairs in which Elizabeth had been involved, long before she met Michael. Michael, she whispered, worried. There are things here I don't understand. Michael pored over the documents, frowning. Some of the papers hinted at threats, debts, and secret alliances. He felt his heart sink. Elizabeth might have been more involved in dangerous affairs than they had realized. We have to be careful, Michael said. If these secrets resurface, they could reach you, me, and even Jonathan. Sophie nodded, but a glimmer of determination shone in her eyes. We can't let the past control us. We have to understand what happened. Michael smiled, proud of his daughter. Exactly. Together we are stronger. That evening, sitting in the living room, Michael and Sophie discussed what they would do next. They decided to retrace every element of Elizabeth's past, understand the threats she had faced, and discover why certain secrets had been carefully hidden. As they parted for the night, each felt that the life they knew had changed. The past, with its mysteries and dangers, was now blending with a future where father and daughter could finally rebuild their lives. But in the shadows, certain forces remained silent, ready to reveal that Elizabeth's secrets were far from entirely buried. The revelations about Elizabeth's past left Michael and Sophie both intrigued and worried. They knew that to fully understand their family's life, they would have to explore these long-hidden secrets. The next morning, armed with courage and determination, they began sorting through the documents in the file discovered the day before. Among the letters and papers, they came across names, addresses, and clues to mysterious matters Elizabeth had handled in secret. Some seemed to be linked to influential people, others to potentially dangerous situations. Michael, look at this, Sophie said, showing a letter signed by an unknown name, RW, it talks about threats if certain documents are made public. Michael frowned. Elizabeth must have been living under enormous pressure. If this information falls into the wrong hands, we could be in danger. Determined to understand, they set out to follow the clues. Their first destination was the city where Elizabeth had spent several years before meeting him. By interviewing old friends and colleagues, they began to piece together a complex puzzle. Elizabeth had uncovered irregularities in certain cases, and her discreet investigations had put her in danger. A trail led them to one of Elizabeth's old offices. The place was deserted, but inside, they found a safe hidden behind a bookcase. Sophie and Michael cautiously opened it. Inside were documents detailing financial transactions, coded letters, and a small personal notebook of Elizabeth's, containing her most intimate thoughts about the risks she had taken to protect her family. "She always wanted to protect us," Michael murmured, leafing through the notebook. "Even at the cost of her own safety." Sophie nodded, moved. "We must continue to search, to understand everything she did, and why she took these risks." That day marked a turning point. Michael and Sophie realized that Elizabeth's past was more complex than they had imagined. Between secrets, threats, and sacrifices, the woman they loved so much had lived a life full of courage and mystery. As they left the office, Michael felt a new determination. He would protect his daughter at all costs, and together they would uncover the truth about Elizabeth's hidden life. But one question remained in the air: who was RW really, and what threats still loomed over them? Michael and Sophie were now immersed in the investigation of RW, the mysterious figure whose letters posed a threat to Elizabeth's past. Every document seemed to hold a clue, but the identity of this person remained elusive. After several days of research, they discovered that RW was not just an acronym. It was Richard Wallace, a former associate of Elizabeth's in her discreet business dealings. According to the documents, he had attempted to manipulate certain financial situations and had been confronted by Elizabeth's courageous investigations. His resentment toward her, and now toward her family, seemed deep. "Michael," Sophie whispered, showing a recent letter, written by RW, addressed to Elizabeth before her death. "He knew she would protect us, but he still threatens our family." Michael felt a shiver run down his spine. The threat was real, and Sophie's safety was no longer an abstraction. "We must act quickly. If Richard Wallace is still alive, he may seek revenge or reclaim what he believes is his." They decided to notify Jonathan Bennett and secure Elizabeth's documents. Tensions were mounting with every moment. Michael didn't want to take any risks for Sophie, his daughter whom he had finally found. That evening, as they were checking the papers one last time, Michael heard a strange noise outside. He rushed to the window and saw a figure moving away in the shadows. His heart raced. "He's here," he whispered. Sophie felt her breath catch. "Michael, what are we doing?" "We can't remain passive," he said determinedly. "We must uncover his intentions and protect our family at all costs." They then decided to put a plan in place, secure the documents, install protective measures around the house, and, above all, identify all of Richard Wallace's contacts and movements. The hunt for Elizabeth's past was now becoming an urgent matter of security. As night fell on the Harrington mansion, Michael and Sophie realized that the mystery and danger weren't behind them, they were present. And that the truth about Elizabeth, however heartbreaking and courageous, could put their entire lives at risk. But for Michael, one thing was clear: he would never let anyone harm his daughter, Sophie, and he would uncover the secrets of the woman he had loved so much. After days of preparation and meticulous research, Michael and Sophie were ready to confront Richard Wallace. They had gathered all the documents, traced his movements, and identified a location where he seemed to be operating discreetly. The tension was palpable. Michael knew this encounter could change everything. They arrived at an old office located in an industrial area, hidden from view. Michael took a deep breath and knocked on the door. A cold, stern voice answered. "Come in." Inside, Richard Wallace stood behind a desk cluttered with papers and files. His eyes, hard and calculating, stared at Michael and Sophie with a disturbing intensity. "I was expecting you," he said, a wry smile on his face. You must be the daughter and husband of the one who always bothered me. Sophie felt her heart pound, but Michael placed a protective hand on her shoulder. We know everything, Richard. We know what you've tried to do and what you still hope to achieve. You won't intimidate us. Richard burst out laughing. Do you really think I'll let this happen? Elizabeth defied me to the end, and now here you are, you're just heirs to a past you don't understand. Michael stepped forward, determined. You've threatened my family long enough. We want answers. Why all this? Why these threats? Richard sighed, almost tired, but still with that icy arrogance. Elizabeth thought she could control everything. She wanted to protect everything, but some things are dangerous. I lost a lot because of her secrets, and I wanted to get back what was mine. Sophie felt a burning anger rise within her. You don't know anything about us. You don't know anything about love, about my mother's courage. Richard's face froze, and for a moment, silence dominated the room. Michael took the opportunity to step forward and ask a crucial question. What do you really want? Richard seemed to hesitate, as if doubt was creeping in. I just wanted to be acknowledged. Elizabeth always ignored me. But now I understand that you are her family, and I have nothing more to do against you. Michael sensed the confrontation had reached a tipping point. Richard, finally confronted with the strength and unity of the family, backed down. Very well, you win. Take your documents and leave. But know this, some secrets can never be completely erased. Sophie, her heart pounding, felt a mixture of relief and fear. We survived, she said softly. Michael took her in his arms. And now we can finally rebuild our family, free from all danger. As they left Richard Wallace's office, Michael and Sophie realized that the trials weren't over, but they had reached a crucial milestone. Elizabeth's secrets, the threats of the past, everything had led to this moment where father and daughter could finally envision a future together, strong and united. In the days following the confrontation with Richard Wallace, Michael and Sophie returned home with a feeling they had never experienced before: peace. Although some secrets from the past remained buried, the immediate threat was gone. For the first time in years, they could look forward to the future together. Michael showed Sophie every corner of the Harrington house, showing her Elizabeth's memorabilia, her artwork, her photographs, and her letters. Each object told a story, each memory bringing father and daughter a little closer. Sophie finally felt at home, accepted and loved, surrounded by her mother's memory and Michael's protective presence. I never imagined, she said one evening, looking at the garden where Elizabeth loved to walk. I thought my life would always be lonely, but now I feel complete. Michael smiled, moved. Your mother would have been proud of you. And I'm happy that you're finally here, with me. We've lost time, but we still have a whole life to make up for. They decided to celebrate Elizabeth's memory with a small ceremony in the cemetery, no longer in sadness, but in gratitude and love. Family and friends gathered, and Sophie placed a rose on her mother's grave, whispering a simple "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Michael, standing beside her, felt the weight of the years lift. They had faced the past, uncovered Elizabeth's secrets, overcome threats, and begun to rebuild their family. For the first time in a long time, he truly felt like a father, and Sophie truly felt like a daughter. The following days were filled with laughter, discussions, projects, and small but precious moments, cooking together, watching old movies Elizabeth loved, sharing memories and stories. The past, with its secrets and pain, had become a solid foundation on which they could build their future. And as the sun set over the Harrington mansion, illuminating the garden and Michael and Sophie's faces, there was a deep and abiding feeling: life, with all its surprises and trials, had finally found its balance again. A new family was born, no longer separated by secrets and the past, but united by love, courage, and Elizabeth's memory. And in that light-filled home, father and daughter knew that nothing, not time, not secrets, not threats, could ever separate them again.